How you doing, folks? My name is Nathaniel Sawyer. I'm activist here in Monterey County, California. I'm gonna say that again just in case it just started recording. My name is Nathaniel Sawyer. I'm an activist in Monterey County, California. A lot of you know me. I want to introduce you to a legend, an icon in the making. No, it's serious, Laurie. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Laurie Philip Michaels, and each of those names means a great deal to me since I chose them myself. Philip was instrumental in keeping me alive through my teenage years because trans people suffer from a lot of depression and bullying. So that's why my middle name sounds like a man's name. But I am a trans woman and an activist, and I want to see my own, personal issue is stopping the murders and stopping the hate and stopping even minor microaggressions and just meanness in the culture toward trans people.
Laurie, tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Like, for people to really know who you are, know about their, not even just transgender community, just you in general. Like, how was your upbringing? You have talked to me in the past about living in two different worlds. You remember being a white male, but now you experience things differently. And we've had a deeper conversation in our just talks and encounters and things like that. If you want to go into that and tell me just a little bit about your life.
Sure. Well, I was a teenager in the 1980s, and I was a preteen in the 70s. And in those periods of time, transgender wasn't a part of the national conversation. Nobody really knew what that was. The only person I knew that matched that description was RuPaul, and I didn't feel a whole lot of similarity between myself and RuPaul, so that didn't answer it for me. I thought, in fact, for a really long time, I thought that perhaps I was gay, because that's what people were calling me. And so I dated some men and found that I definitely was not gay. And I spent the next 30 years or so trying to live as macho a life as possible, trying to compensate. And that's a very painful thing to do. I spent 10 years working for California American Water as a utility worker. I'm very proud of the work I did, but it didn't really match my personality. So, yeah, I mean, the pain that I went through as a youngster had no name. And when I finally came around to it in adulthood, it was like a huge weight came off me.
When was it when you finally embraced your true self? I guess if I'm wording it correctly.
I think that's a nice way of wording it, actually. I began my transition in January of 2017. Trump came into office. Pence is one of the most anti-LGBT and particularly anti-trans politicians in the nation. That got me thinking about transgender issues, which I'd been thinking about for a while. But I started connecting it to myself. And once I started doing that, I realized I had no way to stay in the closet, not when the top officials in the country were going to try and hurt my people.
And thank you for being a leader. I've personally seen you out in the streets. Literally, lately, you've been out in the streets every Sunday, not just fighting for transgender community members, but also Black Lives Matter, BIPOC, people of color. Everything under the sun. You make sure that people know that you are an activist. You're not just a person that's for yourself. And that's something I love about you. You know, we've had our conversations over the phone, just in person, that I've always thought that I don't see that in any activist, who, no matter who you are, that you can like step outside yourself and fight for other causes. And something interestingly about you that I hope I learn as I grow in myself and as I go to psychology is that I want to learn more about people and how they can, you know, separate themselves in different worlds. And something that you've amazingly accomplished over your many years, because you know you are older than me, and that has a lot of wisdom. You have a lot of history that you walked through in your own right. That you've been a white man, but you also have seen a different side of things. So you can probably talk about racism in a way that I couldn't even understand. You know, so if you want to go into that and what you've seen, because I remember you telling my wife.
It's hard for me to talk about racism per se, but it is easy for me to talk about privilege.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I spent most of my life as presenting as a white man, and that puts you near the pinnacle of privilege. You know, if you add wealth to that, you are the most privileged people in the world. And now I'm presenting as who I am, which is a trans woman, and that puts me near the bottom of privilege.
Yeah,
it's very difficult sometimes to get people to hear me or take me seriously. I am seeing firsthand what misogyny is like. You know, I get groped and handled in public sometimes, and things like that, that I've had reported to me all my life by my women friends, and yet I didn't understand it until I didn't understand how severe it was until I came out and transitioned. And I didn't understand a lot of things, I think, until I transitioned. It made me more sensitive to everyone who suffers under what we have recently been calling white supremacy. I think it's had many, many names, but the reality is that privilege isn't earned, it's given. And it's given to you without merit, simply based on what you are and not on who you are. And my experience of two levels of privilege makes me particularly angry about how privilege is used against people, not just trans people, but Black people and Latinx and Chicanox and everybody, literally everybody suffers under privilege, and yet everyone has a station in privilege. And I think that is something we need to change.
You know, Laurie, it's important. I thought that I don't, especially because it's February and we all know Black History Month's coming up. But I thought this would be a very important opportunity to talk to people in the LGBTQS community, along with the regular community activists and leaders in our country, or it doesn't matter who you are, because I feel like the African American community needs to hear people who are necessarily not outside their community, because we all know that there's Black and brown LGBTQX people, but we don't necessarily recognize them at the time, if I'm being honest and authentic in saying that. I remember, honestly, to be real with you, you are my first trans woman friend, if I'm being honest and not going to say, oh, I have friends that are in the trans, you know, community all the time. No, that's not true. You were my first, and how we met was interesting. We met through activism, I think, unless you correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think we met on the January 3rd, March.
Yeah. And, you know, the first thing that I thought, I was like, man, she's amazing. That's a legend right there. But, you know, at the same time, I was still learning. I'm still learning, you know, about what to say, you know, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. I am always going to have to check myself. And I'm saying that for people that are going to be watching this later and stuff, because I think a lot of white people in general sometimes think if they're on the left and they're liberal and they're like, oh, I have black friends, I'm not racist. Or on the right, they're like, I don't know, I don't see color. I'm gonna be real with you and say that no, I need to make sure that I continually educate myself and talk to people who are not necessarily in the same bubble as me. And
I think that's right. And I just want to say about that. I think people who say I don't see color, or I don't hate anyone, or I think those people are unwilling to examine themselves and unwilling to make the changes that we really need in society. And I find it very offensive when people say, "Oh no, I love trans people," and I say, "Have you ever met one before?" No. Well, then how do you say that to me? How do you say that to me? Have you ever stepped up and spoken up for trans people? And they say, well, no. Then how do you say you love us? What is it that you love about us? And I said, you know, there's plenty to love, even if you don't know one of us. We're in all the creative industries. If you like TV and movies and books, you are indebted to trans people.
Laurie, I want to switch gears and talk about the health care industry, if you feel comfortable talking about that. I feel like we recently have someone that's, I guess, in the higher office. Do you know? I forgot the name of the person who is now.
Yeah, I don't know the name offhand. It's very new, fresh news.
It really is. Like, I'm sorry, viewers, that when you watch this, I'm ignorant towards it. It just literally happened, and I feel like this leader who's part of the transgender community was unknown to not just me, but a lot of people, if I am being authentic and real. But I think that we both talk, even on Facebook, we're like, well, we're both saying, well, we hope she does a good job, and actually fights for people, for you, and it isn't just there. And I wanted to hear what you think about the current healthcare system. How can it be fixed? What are your problems in it? Like, when you go to a doctor, do you feel comfortable, with some of the things you have to tell certain doctors?
I would say the answer to that is no. I mean, I don't feel comfortable talking about a lot of what trans experience is on a personal level. For instance, one of the most unpleasant questions that trans people are ever asked is they're asked, did you get surgery? Have you changed your anatomy below the waist? And I try to think of any time anyone ever asks that question, except from a trans person, what's going on down there? You don't even ask that of people you're dating. You don't ask, can I know the dimensions or anything of that nature? It's crude and hard to take. And people in the healthcare industry can be just as crude and unaccepting as people outside of it. So, I inherit a lot of other wrongs because I'm now presenting as a woman. That means I get all of the mistreatment that women get in terms of healthcare, where they're just not taken seriously, where their pain isn't taken seriously. I inherit all of that.
And I agree. I was ignorant. Honestly, I was ignorant till a couple months back. Me and my wife are been trying to have a child for a year now, or over a year now. And a gynecologist told my wife that she's young, and don't worry about it. It's gonna happen. You're not trying hard enough. And so when I think you've seen the Facebook post that I put out there. It was a little bit related to my wife's experience. And as a man and as a husband, first as a man, I feel like I should have been more, sensitive to my wife's feelings. Later on, it took me a while to really, really, really understand how she was traumatized by what that doctor told her, because it was an older doctor. And she said, oh, you're 27 and it'll happen eventually. Or and then they told her to get on birth control, stuff like that when she's trying to have a child. And so, like, I'm just saying, in that little instance of my view, I understand what you're saying. With now that you've entered this world of women's health care, I hear what you're saying, and I believe you. And it's sad. I feel like for you and for all, there needs to be dignity and
That's
respect. If someone tells you that something's wrong with them or they need some help, you should take that to the highest priority. What do you
it's
just
almost like we shouldn't be fighting to end white male privilege. We should instead be fighting to have everyone's privilege be at that level.
Equity. I see. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Because the way white men are treated is the way everyone should be treated. It's the humane way of treating people, and the other groups aren't treated that way. And I would even include groups like children. Children have no power in our society. They can't vote. So nobody takes care of them unless they just happen to like that as a cause. And I think that's just another level of privilege. It's the level of privilege that is the privilege of the disenfranchised, which is basically none, no privilege. And they deserve much more respect than they get. And I deserve more respect than I get. And you deserve more respect than you get. And the fact that we don't get that respect is, in my view, one of the deepest and most important problems in our culture and in cultures around the world.
Okay, I'm gonna get a little deeper on the transgender community really quick, and always tell me if, hey Nate, I don't want to talk about that. We can talk about something else. First, I'm going to ask about the Black and Brown community. You can separate into African American Latinx community on how do they treat you and as a trans woman. And then I want to also ask after those two, about the LGBTQ community. Do you feel like sometimes you're not as relatable to them? Like, I remember you telling me that there's not a lot of trans women here on the Monterey Peninsula that you know of, that you talk to on a daily basis.
There's a lot to unpack there. What was the first part of the question?
Let's talk about the African American community, and then we'll jump to the Latino.
Okay. So, with regard to how I'm treated by African Americans, it's a completely divided experience. I get really severely toxic masculinity from some Black men. But I also get incredible support from other Black men and from the activist community of Black people that I know. I get a great deal of support. It's the nature of prejudice to want to be able to put everyone in the same box and say everyone's in this box and everyone that's in that box does this thing. But the truth isn't that at all. The truth is that when I'm active and when I'm trying to get my voice heard, I'm talking to the Black community as well as the white community and other communities. But I'm talking especially to the Black community because so many of the murders that occur among trans people happen to Black women. And the people who get arrested tend to be Black men if it's a Black woman who's been killed. That doesn't tell me actually who's killing them, and I want to be clear about that, because Black men get arrested for false charges all the time, and I'm aware of that. So I don't know who's killing Black people, or Black trans people.
Yeah.
But I know that there's a toxic masculinity that won't tolerate us in the Black community.
I get what you're saying there, and there's no wrong in you, saying, hey, look, this is how I'm getting treated, regardless of race, ethnicity, or religion. And in my opinion, I personally think that because a lot of Black and brown people, African American, African diaspora, are religious. And religion does have a huge part of that, in just my view. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, and the viewers feel free to, say a comment later as well. But I personally think that when we're talking about the African American community, sorry, I have neighbors and they're doing something in the backyard, but a lot of them that are can be as far right as a white Caucasian person who is far right. You've experienced that with some brotherhood guys with some sort of cult.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is like.
When you've got religion backing you up on any kind of hate, you can pretty much justify anything you want. Yeah. And I'm personally an atheist. I'm personally an anti-theist. If I were working to proselytize my beliefs, I would be working to end religion, because I think it can be so harmful. But I'm also aware that there are people who are religious and take a great deal of comfort in it, and don't use it as a weapon against others. And I have no problem with that. It's just that in my lifetime, religion has been used so frequently as a reason to hurt me.
And I'm not going to, and for the people that are watching, remember, we're not really, when I say religion, I didn't say Christianity, I didn't say Muslim. I'm just saying in general religion, as someone may see Laurie or hear about the transgender community or LGBTQX or something that's against what they follow on a daily basis, and may treat them less than because of that. I personally practice Buddhism teachings, but I'm a Christian. But me saying that, I have issues with that because of the history that has been in that, and I don't want to get too deep into that, because this is not talk about religion segment. This is about Laurie and the transgender community. So I want to roll back on.
But I think that you're onto something, though, that good things that can really bring to life somebody and help them through this journey that is our lives, can also be twisted to do a great deal of harm, and to support almost any action. We're very good at lying to ourselves, much better at lying to ourselves than to others.
So we talked about the African American community a little bit. What about the Latinx community? Is this the same as the African, not African American, or African diaspora? Is it the same?
No, I would say not. I don't get any hate from the Latinx community that I can find. And in fact, Brown Berets, East Bay chapter of Brown Berets have embraced me. They call me their hermana en la lucha, which means, I think I just brutalized that, but it means their sister in the fight. And I couldn't be prouder of that name. So no, I'm not getting as much hostility. But then when I read my papers that tell me what's happening in trans communities around the world, I see people being murdered in Brazil in huge numbers, and murdered in Mexico occasionally. And so I don't know, how do these groups that you're talking about to me, how can we talk about them as a singular entity when we see such varied behavior from country to country, area to area, religion to religion? I think that our labels conceal a great deal about our personal responsibility.
I understand what I'm thinking as you're saying that, and you're absolutely right. Hmm. That's the that's really deep, and you're absolutely right about that. You know, when I was in the Philippines serving in the in a mission trip, you know, I hate saying that because of what I
It's
know,
okay.
but there was a group called um, there's in the Philippines they have a word for trans people, and they call them bakalas, I believe. And they have a bathroom for bakalas, all these and these things. And that was my first experience. I was young, 19, 20, when I went over to the Philippines and things like that. And I I don't know, like I didn't like the fact that they were it was almost like segregation, you know.
Mhm.
It was like it was disgusting to see, you know. And like I said, that was my first experience. And when I when we would talk about it to our leaders, they would say things like um, they would bring up the Bible pretty much and say it's wrong. But um, I don't think, you know, if they really followed Jesus, Jesus wouldn't, you know. Like I'm not trying to, like I said, I'm not trying to get religious, but I'm just, it's very interesting. I don't know what you're bringing up.
I don't know what sources in the Bible say that it's wrong for a man to want to be a woman. I've asked people, and they go back to Deuteronomy and Leviticus, and the verses are against gay people. And as much as I want to defend gay people, I say to them, you have no idea what my sexuality is just because you know how I'm presenting. Um, I haven't revealed that to you. You haven't asked me on a date. You're not going to know whether I'm gay, straight, or what that means to me. Whether, you know, for instance, if I were straight to the rest of the world, that would make me a lesbian as a transgender person. And if I were gay, that would make me a heterosexual as a transgender person. And so these boxes that we make, they're invented. They're invented. They aren't a part of the canon. They're just being invented to deal with current issues and current times, and to beat some people down with a 4,000-year-old book. Just seems unreal. Culture has to make progress faster than that, you know?
You're absolutely right. Um, Man, we just hit on some really big topics, so I have to like really take in a lot of what you're saying. You know, I'm trying to listen and take in the wisdom that you're bringing today. Do you have anything that you would like to get off your chest that you know you would like people to know when they're watching this?
Well, I go out protesting 2 times a week. I go out protesting on Fridays for trans lives, and I go out protesting on Sundays for multi-issue. Anyone can bring any issue, and I will welcome it. You know, if it's an issue I've never heard of, I'm ready to be educated. If it's an issue that's against people, if you know, I think the way you tell whether you're on the right side of anything, I saw this in a meme recently and I thought it was so smart. If you're on the side where Nazis are yelling, you're on the wrong side. And if you're on the side that are getting yelled at by Nazis, you're on the right side. And it's just a really quick test. Am I doing the right thing? Well, would Nazis like me? If not, then maybe I'm on the right track. And I think people need tests like that. I think if you ask yourself simple questions like that, you can kill off a lot of the hate and prejudice that's in your mind. And I say your mind, not meaning you, but meaning every one of us.
Thank you, Laurie. I truly appreciate you having this conversation with me today. Um, I think that it educated a lot of people, and I'm sure we'll have more conversations in the future.
Great.
I truly, truly want to thank you for showing up right now, and I thank you for all the things you're doing on the Monterey Peninsula in regards to Black lives, Brown lives, the LGBTQ community, especially the transgender community. You are a legend to me. You know, as I go into my life, you will be one of the people that will be written in my book. You know, so I truly.
You're so very sweet. I'm very thankful for the opportunity, Nathaniel.